good! Yes, good!
Is you want to take the wide end of the tie and make it tight to the neck.
This might be like the craziest outfit I've ever put on for one of my commentary videos. And if you don't know who I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to be, I'm supposed to be a KISS student, okay? Nobody say anything. Hi everyone! Welcome back to your spring semester of KISS. Hope you missed me, because I surely did miss you guys. I've been waiting to talk about season 2 of EXO Kitty. If this is your first rodeo with me, my name is Gwynette, and I will be your host for today's commentary / character analysis. We're just gonna be discussing the second season of EXO Kitty, which is the spin-off series of To All the Boys I've Loved Before on Netflix. This TV show specifically stars Lara Jean's younger sister, Kitty, as we follow her on her journey around Korea and understanding her culture, and as well as following her own love story. I just want to preface that even with my own opinions about the writing and the creative choices that make EXO Kitty is with the fact that I do actually enjoy this show. I think that it was pretty easy to follow, and even if there was a bunch of twists and turns and a bunch of new characters that have been added to the season, I still think it's pretty fun to watch. I think that you should watch season 1, then my video on season 1. That's out, by the way. That's been out since May 2024, so you better watch it, alright? And then you should watch season 2, then watch this video, okay? Watch my video. I think it does do a pretty good job of what I feel about the first season of EXO Kitty, and still covers a majority of my current feelings about it. So, put on your favorite K-pop song, and get into this hot tub with me, and let me be the first to welcome you back to KISS.
You are right, as usual. I'm glad I went over to talk to her.
She was right.
So the last time we saw Kitty in Korea, now a 16-year-old girl, than the 11-year-old that we knew in the To All the Boys series, I had deduced that she truly only displayed 2 types of character types or character dynamics that not only made her uninteresting to watch, but one that felt so out of touch and so unreal that made her almost unimportant to her own story. I had said that they had made her a literal walking and talking reference to All the Boys series, also known as Lara Jean's little sister. I'll emphasize on the little sister part later, and that she's also a matchmaker. It leaves little to no room for Kitty to actually shine on her own in her own story, because she's constantly defined by Lara Jean's success story, and those 2 traits basically defined her character. I found that Jenny Han, if not most YA authors, chose the tell, don't show method. And if you don't know what that kind of is, it's kind of like where the characters are basically speaking to you about what they're doing or what they're feeling, and it's never something that you have to use your intuition about. If there's anything that I can really just say positively about this new season of EXO Kitty, I can say that the references to All the Boys I Loved Before is a lot more subtle, which I really liked. It's really great that we're not constantly reminded that Kitty is Lara Jean's sister. It's always sort of implicated or implemented, but it's never truly in your face about it, which it allows us to really just focus on Kitty's story and to really understand what makes Kitty Kitty. The only real problem that I had with this season was how constant these parallels were. It's just that when the writers found out that a lot of us went crazy when Minho called her Covey, like for the first time in season 1 when he was in the bush, it's crazy because like literally I think one of the episodes, episode 5 or episode 6, when Peter Kavinsky came back into the picture, surprise by the way, like that wasn't a surprise to me because I knew that eventually they'll bring in one of the older cast members. I knew. I get that the magic was there, like definitely I felt butterflies when like he just kept calling her Covey, or like it was a constant thing. Guys, the moment's over. Like he's like, oh, I learned it from Covey. Oh, I learned about your constant adventures from Covey. Alright Covey, I'll see you later. I felt like Kitty this season, I'm gonna talk about her personality a bit more. It's a lot better than the way they communicated it to us in the first season. I had a big problem with this last season as well. All of the personality traits that she was given was basically spoken to us by characters, but we never truly see it. If on the off chance that we did see it, like we saw her actions try to complement what other people were saying, those actions were either in contrast to those compliments or just simply not strong enough for us to even believe Kitty is supposed to be all of those things. We all knew who Kitty was in the past from the original series, the To All the Boys series, and had wished that the writers had chosen to keep that same snarky and relatable character that was basically the voice of reason to Lara Jean. But instead, in this sort of spin-off, we see that the writers have chosen a very poor choice to make her Americanness her point of charm. And whether we liked it or not, Kitty didn't come off as charming as she thought she did, or as the writers had thought she did. Yeah, that's basically the whole point of why we're making this video. Kitty 1.0, season 1 Kitty, was basically more self-involved, and she prioritized herself a lot more than the situation of other people around her or their feelings. I made a comment about this before in my first video about ExoKitty, and how that trait of hers was most prominent. I find that there's a lot of similarities in other Netflix TV shows that people also love to point out. I'm specifically bringing up Emily from Emily in Paris, and it's obvious that both writers for both of these respective TV shows, they love to do this thing where if their main protagonists, their female protagonists, are just too boring and they feel like that their stories are pretty aimless, they make sure to make this one personality trait the most interesting thing about them, and it's being well-intentioned but clumsy. And I think that's how ExoKitty season 1 at least had easily gotten away with Kitty's lack of enthusiasm in learning her Korean heritage. I also think that the mindset of being a good person with that out-of-touch trait, which weirdly is just being American in Korea, despite growing up with traces of Korean culture around her. I know her grandparents are alive. I saw her harmony, okay? It's often why Kitty is always bailed out of most uncomfortable situations without any real chance to grow. Kitty's Americanness enabled and often excused a lot of her mannerisms and actions, and it was a newly implemented detail that allowed her character in Korea to keep up with that younger sibling dynamic that she forces onto her new friend group, where she's someone who constantly needs guidance and often gets away with a lot of things simply because she doesn't know any better. I'm sick of that trope, okay? I'm sick of it. We never see Kitty as Kitty Song Covey and fulfill the promises that she has to herself, her culture, or her mom, as the first season has always been about her desire for a love story. And even if she did, it always felt circumstantial and never out of her own free will. You know what? Before you guys come for me online saying that there's nothing wrong with a love story, like some people just want to have love in their lives and they don't want anything else, which is totally fine. And it's like that for a lot of Jenny Han's stories, where she uses To All the Boys I Loved Before and The Summer I Turned Pretty as basically the protagonist just wanting a love story, wanting these romantic gestures and the big grand gesture at the end of the day. But what was the point of prefacing with the show ExoKitty with Kitty's grief about not knowing about her mom, or having that desire within her to have the same connection her sisters have to Eve's song?
Well, no one told me about it. My whole life I've had to rely on other people to tell me about Mom. It's more than that, Dad. This is fate.
Surprisingly enough, when I watched the show, I found that a lot of the flaws that Kitty had, or a lot of the flaws that I pointed out in the first season, were acknowledged. Not like they really did anything to change a lot of those opinions that I had, but you know, it's there. It's been acknowledged that they know what's going on.
They all wanted to know what I learned about my mom, how my Korean was, and I realized I didn't really learn anything about my mom. Like, not actually. And I almost flunked out. My Hangul sucks.
But it was obvious that they were trying to make Kitty a much better person than who she was in the first season, even having her constantly comment on how bad of a person she is, or how bad of a character she is.
I'm a terrible, awful person. I've hurt a lot of people. I've made such a mess of things at school, and now I've made a bigger mess.
I actually might have made it worse.
But even acknowledging the flaws that are so purely Kitty Song Covey aren't enough. Like, you shouldn't settle for someone's word on it, or the self-deprecation she displays due to how poorly she was written, how poorly mannered she is. Because legitimately, it's pitying. That's not going to make her change. Pitying people and giving in to what they want or what they want to hear is an undeserving reward, and Kitty Song Covey is a proud receiver of it. The most evidence I have to this statement are basically just scenes where Kitty is being immediately comforted and coddled, like plenty of her seasons in season 2 with Minho.
Oh no, that's not true.
No, you're not.
A lot of the other scenes where she's in with scene partners like Juliana and Pravina, they're being villainized for not giving in and basically not allowing Kitty to feel better about herself, rather making herself feel worse about the current situation that they're all caught in. To put it simply, they don't give her the permission to forgive herself, rather making it harder for Kitty to do so and move forward.
I'm really sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but it did.
I'm really sorry.
You know what? I'm not gonna help you feel better about what you did. If I have to live with it, so do you.
And you know, that's the absolute worst part of it. She knows. Kitty knows that she makes mistakes with meddling and lacking in her self-control, but She also knows that she's a terrible decision maker, which most young people are, and how she's basically comments on how terrible of a person she is whenever things go flying off the handle and affect everyone around her. She knows, but she doesn't fix it. That's the one big character flaw of this season. Kitty knows that she has a problem. She knows that there are things wrong with what she's doing. She won't fix it, and she doesn't want to, because at the end of the day, to this show's core, Kitty Song Covey will never truly fix things for herself because other people will always be there to fix things around her for her. It happened with Kitty's big comeback into Kiss at the beginning of season 2. It happened again for Kitty's cultural reconnection storyline, and it'll happen like clockwork when Kitty needs something that she refuses to take responsibility for. Everyone's on her timetable, and it's either that you get on board or you get discarded after you serve your purpose. Like Juliana. Because why do you keep doing this to them, okay? Stop villainizing them. Expanding on my last idea, a lot of people thought that Kitty was getting mistreated this season, which I don't fully agree on, surprisingly enough. I understand that a lot of the circumstances Kitty faces were generally just cruel to her and cruel to the choices that she has made, but you also have to consider the fact that a lot of the things that Kitty has done in the last season, her actions at least, had faced little to none repercussions, and this season was just addressing that. Especially when looking at the love triangle or the square or a hexagon or whatever it is between herself, Yuri, Juliana, and Pravina. She struggled on the line between her desire to be friends with Yuri and the romantic feelings that she had for her, which made Juliana insecure of their relationship. Juliana felt left out of this plot between herself, her girlfriend, and Kitty. So like any other person in a relationship, she felt like she had to reinsert herself back and take her place back into this equation. While Yuri often prioritized Juliana and prioritized her in their relationship, it didn't feel like it was enough because actions do speak louder than words. Kitty's desire to move forward with Pravina was held back due to her need to be a friend to Yuri and her underlying feelings for her. Kitty's trying to be friends with Juliana, to be civil with her, because either way she knows that in the end her heart's gonna be broken. Whether she has to give up her feelings for Yuri and to give up that part of herself that still wants to be with her, or has to break someone else's heart and ruin that possibility of having a friendship with someone else. And I think that the biggest mistreatment of her character, which I use very lightly here, is Kitty being thrown out of her great aunt's house under the guise that that side of her family, the Korean side, didn't want her. She felt rejected by something that's supposed to be part of her, and she's supposed to be part of that side too. It's a heartbreaking scene, I'm not even gonna lie to you, that partnered pretty well with the romantic trope that's slowly building between Minho and Kitty, but it's a reality to a lot of half Asians or even Asian descent who grew up in the western side of the world have to face. I consider that this plot was one that was identified and executed well enough to have a proper resolution, where despite Kitty facing that rejection, she can still continue to pursue it. It's a strength to her character that truly does show that if Kitty wants something, then she'll do everything that she possibly can to have it. But that's only ever true if she truly does want it. And in most cases, a lot of things that we see that Kitty does herself without any help from her friends or without any outside help only serve her and disregards feelings of the other people around her. In the end, if it benefits Kitty, then she'll truly push to have it. We see it in season 1 when she convinces her dad to let her go to Korea for her boyfriend Dae, and offhandedly mentions that she lacks that connection to her mom the same way her sisters have that connection to her mom. Then in the end of the season, we realize that Kitty has literally done nothing to cater to that storyline. We see her again in season 1 with Alex, where she pushes him to meet her sisters after he tells her that he doesn't want to upend Professor Lee's life and wants to learn about his biological parents at his own pace. And her eagerness, while well-intentioned, puts Alex in this tough spot where he has to put up his boundaries. I hate that this actually happened, that she has the audacity to feel offended that Alex doesn't want to do what she wants and has to put up that boundary with her. On the other hand, if Alex did agree to Kitty's request, Kitty would be jeopardizing the image her sisters have of their mom in their heads, and it would be all because of this secret. If each Covey sister is meant to have a special connection to their mom in their own personal way, Kitty is selfishly attempting to taint that image without even knowing the damage that this will do to Lara Jean, Mario, and even their dad. It would change the narrative of how well everyone did know Keep Song. And then we see it again in season 2, where a lot of her skepticism of Stella come from her jealousy and her desire to protect Minho. It's supported by the dream that she has about being right about Stella, and Minho basically thanking her and falling in love with her. While no one can control their dreams, it's a subconscious reach for correctness. but as well as that desire to be with Minho. I think my biggest critique about this show, especially when I reviewed it last, was that Q was the biggest victim of not establishing those boundaries with Kitty. Basically allowed her to push her own problems onto him and expecting her to not only hold on to those for her, but to take them as his own.
Sorry, I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but it did.
A lot of the opportunities and second chances that Kitty gets always fall into her lap. It's always very convenient for her. It almost seems insincere that Kitty is someone who is supposed to be this ambitious character, but at the same time, she doesn't take charge for a lot of the things that she wants. And more often than not, always been given to her by another character. This story focuses more on Kitty and her desire to connect with her heritage, and less on that desire of her needing to be in a relationship, and her desire of always being right. And you might be thinking, Gwynette, are you really making Kitty out to be some kind of narcissist? No. I don't think that she's not a narcissist. I don't think that because this season, whenever Kitty was proven wrong and told that she was wrong, she backed down. If I hear someone comment the advice Peter gave her about being right and Minho not being ready to hear it, read the room right now. Honestly, read the room. Because it's not about being right. It's not about justifying Kitty's correctness by saying that Minho wasn't ready to hear it. It doesn't mean anything. Because if it did, if Kitty's journey was truly about her being less self-involved, being right shouldn't have mattered to her. And it still shouldn't have been a priority to her that she was right all along.
Am I gonna learn to just mind my own business? All I ever do is ruin things for myself and for other people.
Hey, that is not true. Who cares if Minho wasn't ready to hear what you had to say? I mean, it doesn't mean you're wrong.
Thank you, Peter.
Confused and just got caught up in the moment watching that video.
Thank you for telling me how I feel.
The one absolute thing that I wanted to emphasize about Kitty and her story was that her identity is important to her, and it is one of the main themes of Exo Kitty. And when people usually think about Kitty's self-discovery journey, most people's immediate answer would be about her interest in learning more about her sexuality. But while that is a huge part of her character as a whole, there's another part of her that Jenny Han loves highlighting in a lot of her half-American, half-Korean leading main girls. It's their cultural identity. Characters like Lara Jean and Laurel from The Summer I Turned Pretty talk about how, respectively, they don't feel Korean enough, or don't really know what the Korean American experience is supposed to be like. I also brought this up in Steven as well in my The Summer I Turned Pretty video, and how Jenny continues to bring up this massive gap in missing identity, but ideally doesn't really do anything to really address it. And as someone who also has grown up in Western influences, I understood that. But what frustrated me was that in a lot of Jenny Han's works, that she claims oftenly that she wants to introduce more of the Asian American, or rather Asian POC, in media. But it's only the tip of the iceberg in loss of cultural heritage through generations and modern day influences. Realistically speaking here, how do you want whitewash Asian American representation if you're not willing to put in the work to resolving and developing your characters in a way that satisfies the need within them to know more? And I'm specifically just gonna talk about the Covey sisters because it's most evident in their storyline. Kitty's story specifically implicates her desire to learn more about her roots and her Korean heritage, but in season 1, that takes a back seat in favor of this love triangle that Kitty's accustomed to, and Kitty's desire to be associated with love, and writing her character as some kind of leech off of the original To All the Boys trilogy. I specifically can remember this one part in the second movie of To All the Boys, where Lara Jean and Kitty are wearing these sort of handbooks in a way that feel more culturally aligned with that side of their family. But it feels like that moment becomes outshined by LJ's love story. No, this is not up for discussion, okay? And if anything, I wish that we actually saw the scene where Kitty has this overall realization of how invaluable her time at KISS was, and how that mission about finding more about her mom was minimal, instead of jumping out of that taxi and right back at KISS. It's important that the writers of this season make Kitty understand how her unbalanced priorities would actually affect her, and actually gave us the consequences to that cultural neglect, especially since Kitty last season learned little to nothing and suffered no real consequences. And I still stand by this because we ended the last season with her expelled, and starting the new season with that being exempted, and now she wants to fix that. It's an admirable and redeeming quality, and I love that. I love that about her, because unlike Emily from Emily in Paris, this. She owns up to a lot of her mistakes and acknowledges them instead of acting blameless. Even if Kitty did have her moments of meddling and slipping back into her old habits, I like that those moments, like Minho getting upset with her over Stella, having these bad intentions that only Kitty could see, or when Kitty finds herself continuously apologizing to Juliana, it added weight to Kitty's character. I like that Q had even set up that boundary with Kitty, and that she understood that even her friends' lives don't revolve around hers or other people's problems. And no matter how close she was to them, she had to respect that. It shows that even if she had changed, change wasn't immediate and it takes time to fully take effect. Especially when we want to see her move on from the person that she was in season 1. And to all the people who just genuinely loved the person that Kitty was in season 1, I understand that her quirky, loving side was just a character trait of hers. I like that it was frequently seen throughout season 2, but at the same time, you have to understand that not holding her accountable for a lot of her actions doesn't allow Kitty to grow as a person. You're not allowing her to mature and be able to take accountability for a lot of the things that she has caused or indirectly has caused. If you continuously treat someone like a kid, how do you expect them to grow up? This is especially shown when we see that Kitty has broken her student conduct and the rules and regulations of her heritage scholarship. And mind you, lacked the discipline that she needed to pass her classes. She barely passed that semester. And for some reason, getting expelled and kicked out of a country that's supposed to be part of who you are or supposed to mean something to Kitty doesn't bother her. And that should bother you. She sort of treats it as some sort of inconvenience to her. It's basically something that she learns virtually nothing from because she's excused from those mistakes and faces no real backlash or consequences for doing so. As if it's totally normal for a girl to be sleeping in the boys' dormitory for months on end. Even under the circumstances that had led her to make that decision, if the roles had been reversed, if a boy was staying in the girls' dorms, the consequences would be more severe. And the fact that they're not acknowledging that, the fact that Kitty had it easy, and the fact that she was able to come back to kiss. So why should Kitty Song Covey be the exception to that?
Sharon.
You two aren't a couple.
Oh my god.
Oh god, though. Oh my gosh, why would you know? No.
If you know me in real life, or just like basically know me from watching my videos, hi! Nice to see you again. I literally love watching love stories that beautifully intertwine a familial aspect into the character's main journey without having the sort of conflict of choosing if I should prioritize this or that. And watching this season of EXO Kitty, the second season, it was something I was definitely glad that they decided to incorporate. This person that Kitty has become in season 2 was someone I had hoped that she would have been in season 1, where she was learning about her mother's life in Korea and unraveling it to understand the mother that she barely got growing up, but to understand the woman her mother had chosen to become. And you know the classic saying, it's better late than never, because this season we truly learned Eve Song's importance to Kitty, because we learned that she not only moved to Korea to be at KISS to learn more about her heritage, but it was because that she wanted to repair the broken bond within her family and heal the gap that grows more distant through the decades of self-isolation and each family's pride. Eve Song's story might have began with herself and Gina and this teenage pregnancy story, but it finished with Kitty fulfilling her dying wish of reuniting her mother and her sister. And seeing that Kitty's being given more of these serious and mature scenes of finding a deeper understanding of her family and her solving it really and truly showed Kitty had changed and she was following in her mother's footsteps like she had planned. It showed that Kitty was similar to her mom, finally indulging in that wish of hers and understand who Eve Song was at her age, finally fostering that same deep connections all her sisters had with her too. It's especially heartbreaking when you consider the fact that Kitty feels that she's supposed to have this connection with her mom that's supposed to be personal to each Covey sister, and now Kitty finally has that. Now she doesn't have to feel like she's constantly missing out when compared to Margot and Lara Jean, because her coming to Korea finally had its full circle moment. It basically allowed her to have something only her and her mom share, just like the way all of her sisters have something to share with their mom as well.
You did smile.
The most irritating thing about Kitty's character was that her Americanness acted a lot like a shield and often excused her from her actions. But I'm glad this season finally found a purpose for it. It finally served its real and true purpose when Kitty wanted to find out more about her family and why her mom had come to Korea in the first place, and basically continuing on that legacy or that dream that she had for her. I'm only speaking culturally and genetically here, because Kitty coming from a long line of matchmakers made sense to her character, but it didn't fill in the missing gap that truly connected her to her Korean heritage. The writers did a really good job in showing that Minho was the person who filled in those missing gaps for Kitty and basically helped her understand in the ways that she really couldn't find in herself. He stood as a bridge between her and her bloodline, even if it was the small things in like translating or like even breaking into the archives to steal her mom's time capsule, and basically just helping her overcome this language barrier to truly connect to her great aunt. This integration not only intertwines a love story, but it also intertwines Kitty's own personal story. It just truly demonstrates how Minho fitted into the mold of what Kitty needed and give her the balance that she craved. Not only has she found herself in this journey, but she also found out what she needed and what she wanted in a relationship. And Minho was the one who ticked all those boxes off for her. Even the box where a guy knows how to say thank you. I really love that this team of writers really fleshed out Kitty's and Minho's relationship while still making Kitty's priorities the forefront of the season. Some may disagree, alright? And I don't really care because this is my video and I get to say whatever I want in this video. But Kitty and Minho not kissing at the end really just made sense to me. Minho really prioritized Kitty's needs. And at this time, she needed a friend more than she did a boyfriend. Especially since a lot of the main friend group had lives outside of Kitty's, so it made sense that Kitty leaned more into Minho because he was willing to put his own drama, even his own girlfriend, on hold for her, while everyone else wouldn't be willing to. And feelings aside, he did that for her and became what she needed, even if it pained him to do so. And if that isn't love, and don't even get me started on the secret little smiles and this smile on her face, oh my god. Also, have you heard this like insane rumor that went around of Minho basically paying off Kitty's tuition or scholarship or whatever just so that she could stay another year at KISS and not go back home to Portland? This is probably my favorite arc that Jenny Han has ever explored, has explored in her entire career yet. And as much as I clown her for this lack of exploration in her half-Korean protagonists, I think this is one of her strongest arcs she's ever made. Her love stories are definitely popular, and they're definitely popular for a reason. But Kitty's gap in Korean culture, and thus her lack of connection to her extended family, was something that immediately caught my eye. And I was glad that this season wanted to focus more on that. Let's start off with negatives. I'll preface the category this way. There are a lot of opinions that are surfacing on EXO Kitty's Season 2, and comparing it to the plot of last season, and the most apparent was how this season was lukewarm at best, especially when we look at the absolute main plot of the story, Kitty's Korean heritage. And as much as I appreciate everything that was done to address all of the criticism that a lot of us had with Season 1, and its attempt to make Kitty more of a likable character instead of another girl out of Jenny Han's Asian American mold, I have to agree. This season wasn't as good as the first, and it's not for the reason that you think. The only reason why I didn't like this season so much as I thought I did, it was mostly because I didn't feel emotionally invested in Kitty's family plot. And even if it was sharing the screen time of what EXO Kitty is to its core, it almost felt too late for me to invest in Kitty as anything more than a girl who loves love and wants to be in love. We know that Eve's song isn't a new name to us, or to Kitty, but learning more about her family wasn't a priority to her. It was briefly mentioned in Season 1, and occasionally brought up to the point where her familial connection was a side plot, or so unexplored to us that it made it seem unimportant. And I'm not trying to be mean here, okay? But Kitty's sudden realization of not learning about her mom was so rushed. The emotional connection that we're supposed to feel for Kitty, to see that the actual remorse and guilt on her face for wasting her time on a subject that should have been important to her in the first place, lacked, because it's a revelation to her, but it isn't a revelation to us. The time to feel the pity that we should have had for Kitty had passed, or to simply put it, was never introduced or justified. We feel pity for her in these scenes because we see it's an emotional moment for her. And in all honesty, a lot of the connections we were supposed to make to her mom are very superficial and vague. To also mention, we also know that she just feels this way because she says so. I also think that the biggest sacrifice the Season 1 writers took was taking those emotionally charged scenes and vulnerable moments from her to make her some kind of quirky and funny character and failed to give her that balance. Characters who are typically the most cheerful also have their own facades that contradict and contrast each other, like characters Daisuke from Mouthwash or even Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But if you wanted more female-based characters, let's think about Mabel from Gravity Falls or Enid from Wednesday. These characters all have the same character archetypes with some internal conflict that masks that attitude, but Kitty misses that contrast greatly. And let's just say it how it is. No one cared to give Kitty the courtesy of character depth. And Jenny Han is also someone who is partially to blame for this endeavor, because it's an actual pattern in her work, and it makes ExoKitty the first of her works to actually address it. I'm not saying that because Kitty is categorized now as a girl who never backs down from what she wants and fights to get it, despite there being both negative and positive connotations to such a personality trait. But like most things that work out for Kitty, this resolution for her bringing back her family is handed to her. No matter how sweet of a gesture this was from Minho or on Yuri's part, this storyline was Kitty's, and Kitty's alone to navigate. And it worked out for her without her having to do much of anything. I can't ignore that we've seen the effort that she puts in. And of course I can't talk about the negatives without bringing up the positives as well. But can you truly credit all of this effort of legitimately rebuilding that burned bridge between her grandmothers to her alone? I already talked about how a lot of things under difficult and different circumstances become easily accessible and resolved for Kitty. And for the one plot that really just mattered this season, it becomes another thing to add to that long list of things that shouldn't be credited to Kitty Song Covey. My strongest point to this and how this arguably counteracts that ambitious nature I've mentioned that Kitty supposedly has is Minho bridging the conversation between her and her family, and Yuri sending herself off to Bukjeon and telling Kitty's cousin Jiwon to stop ignoring her. No matter how many times you watch this video and hear me say that Minho is literally that person who fills in the gaps for her, when do we see Kitty filling in those gaps for herself? And I know that we see Kitty butchering the Korean language, but is that really it? Is that all we're supposed to see that Kitty's actually trying this season? How are we supposed to attach these affirmation character traits about her if we don't actually see it?
During a speech in Korean, do you want to hear it?
Okay.
One clip of Kitty speaking Korean or attempting to doesn't automatically make her the person that everyone says she is. Because one, if it didn't matter to Kitty when we were reintroduced to her as a teenager now, why would it mean anything to us now? And two, if it were truly that big of a deal, why not show us and give Kitty the same amount of thoughtfulness you've given to her relationships?
Oh my god, jump scare.
Two things can always be true at the same time, and I think that's the biggest thing I want you to take away from my video today, because I know that I'm gonna sound a little crazy contradicting myself all the time, but it's true. That's the true application of ExoKitty. Whether you like it or not, that Kitty can be this ambitious protagonist, but still be someone undeserving of the praise that she gets, and even be unenthusiastic of the things that don't exactly fit her narrative. Minho can still be that bridge that Kitty needs to fill in those gaps in her culture, but still be known as the same guy who gives her the easy way out of her own personal growth. Yuri can still be in love with Juliana and still have feelings for Kitty. And ExoKitty could be good, but still have terrible writing behind it. I think that a lot of this season was trying to make Kitty to be this more likable character, and the only way that they did that was introduce someone who was a lot worse than her.
I love it when people underestimate me. It's like having this dirty little secret, because they have no idea what I'm capable of.
Oh, like, you know what? They did this in Emily in Paris too. But you know what? I can't give Stella all of the credit, because I have to give it to Pravina and Juliana. Kitty, despite all the mess and delusions, came out a slightly better person than she was in season 1, because both characters, Pravina and Juliana, made her take accountability for the things that Kitty normally would have brushed off as another inconvenience. You might be telling me in the comments that Juliana had no right to push Kitty away and make her feel bad about herself, but keep in mind, season 1 Kitty easily got into Yuri's bubble because Juliana, who is her girlfriend, wasn't there. She had every right to be insecure, but still didn't have the right to feel like Kitty's opinion didn't matter when it came down to their one common denominator. Juliana felt threatened by Kitty, and like any one of us in that situation, she did what she had to do and acted on her first instinct to defend her relationship and her position with her girlfriend. And to some degree, Minho also did this to Kitty when he mistakenly defends Stella because he still believed that she was who he thought she was. And even if Kitty wasn't even right in the end, why wouldn't Minho defend his girlfriend and ensure that their position and their relationship was clear to Kitty? And why wouldn't Pravina get upset at Kitty for basically stringing her along? Both characters, Pravina and Juliana alike, bettered Kitty for her own personal growth, because it finally taught her that everybody else's lives don't revolve around her narrative. Referring back to the last question I had asked myself in my last video, do I think Kitty is a good person or rather a good character? I mean, yeah, sure, why not, right? That's surprising because I made a lot of comments about Kitty always taking for granted of everything she's been given. But Kitty surprised me. She definitely matured this season and finally got the lessons that she was owed in season 1. I think that she still has a long way to go to subjectively be a good person, and she still acts the same despite acknowledging the fact that she's not really a good person. As if she's saying it out loud just to say it. There's no resolution to her saying it. She just brings it up in moments of self-doubt and immediately gets reassured that she's the opposite of what she says she is. I actually hate that about her. So yeah, I changed my mind. No, she's not a good person. She's already acknowledged that she's a terrible person, but she doesn't do anything to correct that. She says that she ruins relationships, but the fact that she doesn't try to change herself or try to correct that sort of way without making any more problems for other people is so bizarre to me. Like, it's bewildering that the fact that she doesn't want to change and that she won't change because she knows that other people will be there to help her out. But at least we got another To All the Boys reference. Woo! Okay guys, that is the end of today's video. I hope you had fun watching it as much as I had fun making it. I've been sort of sitting on a lot of these theories for a little while now since season 2 came out, so I'm really glad that I finally get to show you and share with you guys a lot of what I think. If you want, you can comment your own theories down below. I would love to hear them and love to see them, because I'd love to start discussions with you guys about the theories on ExoKitty, because like what even was going on this season. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys today. If I do have anything else, I guess, to add, I'll make another video. I love talking about ExoKitty. I love talking about my commentaries and my interests with you guys, because I guess that's just like another thing we can share together. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel so that you're able to see more of what I'm up to. I also make vlogs too, so you can see into my daily life as well. So yeah, without further ado, I'll see you guys when we're back at KISS. Have a great rest of your day or night or whatever, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! Inside.